Live in Jerusalem, Benjamin Netanyahu is speaking.
Citizens of Israel, this is a historic day, a happy day for all the citizens of Israel, a day of the victory of the doctrine of peace for peace. I spoke just a few minutes ago with a member of our delegation to Abu Dhabi, and under my direction, the head, Meir Ben Shabbat, invited the delegation of the UAE to Israel, and I can tell you we will accept them with a red carpet, just the way they accepted us. And again, I look at this El Al plane flying over Saudi Arabia, landing in Abu Dhabi, and I was so excited, and I felt huge pride. I'm sure that all of you, with no exception, felt the same. And you definitely felt that this is a special day, and it's a beginning of a new era in our history. I acted towards this day 25 years, a quarter of a century, and I must tell you that for me, personally, it's a personal moment and a national moment together. 25 years ago, I wrote in my book the following things. There's a possibility of peace which doesn't entail concessions on the part of Israel. It is based on Israeli deterrence, and it is based on a strengthening of our force. If in the next generation the Arabs will understand that Israel is sitting safely in the Middle East and it is there to stay forever, perhaps there will be a psychological revolution in the position of the Arab countries regarding the right to exist of Israel. And I wrote, I believe that not forever they will knock their heads against the wall. The state of Israel, where 8 or 10 million Jews will live in a few decades, will be able to benefit from prosperity, momentum, and peace. Just because of the fact that the Jewish state will be so strong, eventually most of the Arab world will be forced to make real peace with it. And then I added, this perception is completely opposed to the regular perception that says that Israel is going to obtain peace only if it reconciliates the Arabs with great concessions that will weaken it and reduce it. On the contrary, I wrote, an existing peace will be achieved only if we can convince the Arabs that it has to live side by side with the Jewish state. The state is here and it will stay here forever. These things I wrote 25 years ago, and since then I've been working tirelessly with a compass, with a map, very clearly in order to obtain them. I wrote it knowing that you make peace with the strong party, and economic strength then becomes political strength. I'm going to answer all your questions, but allow me just to take a perspective and to say to you, we should have turned Israel into a very strong country. And the first thing we have to change is this centralized, bureaucratic, and socialistic economy. The economy has to be free. And I clarified, just a year after I wrote this, I was standing in the Congress in Washington, and I said that we are going to stop the economic American assistance to Israel, that we are now adults. We will turn Israel to a free trade state. It can stand on its own feet vis-a-vis the other countries of the world. And the first thing I did when I came back to Israel, I canceled all the limitations on foreign exchange. And everybody was against me, all the professionals. I canceled the limitations of foreign exchange. And then I reduced the taxes dramatically. And we added competition. And we did all these things that turned Israel into a high-tech superpower. Startups cannot act here with the 68% taxation. We changed Israel. We made it into a strong economy, and that created the strong technology and, of course, the military capability. But this is not enough. We did another thing in this 25 years. We led the struggle against the nuclear armament of Iran. Also, because I went in your mission and I stood against Iran. I went to the American Congress, and again, vis-a-vis the two houses, and I demanded to cancel the nuclear deal. And I want to tell you that these strengths, these forces are the ones that laid the base to a different kind of relationship with many states in the area and also outside the area. And they laid the base to this historic day that we are now experiencing. There are many things that I still cannot tell you, but I believe that they will be published soon enough. But you could have seen the changes yourselves, some of them. Just the tip of the iceberg. You could have seen in the last few years. In March 2018, there was the first flight of Air India over the skies of Saudi Arabia to the state of Israel. And every day, Israeli citizens fly above Saudi Arabia, not in an Israeli plane. Yes, until today. Today it's changed. In October 2018, I visited officially in Oman with the invitation of Sultan Qaboos. In January 2019, I met the president of Chad, a very large Muslim country in Africa, and we renewed the relationship. Then I met in Uganda with the head of the Council of Sudan. And 10 days later, I was in the Warsaw Committee, together with representatives of 6 Arab countries, very open. In August 2020, just a few days ago, I had a conference call with our friend, President Trump, and the head of the UAE, MBZ. And today we saw this commercial, historic flight, first time over Saudi Arabia from Israel to Abu Dhabi. This is a very important preparation visit. I asked the delegation to work quickly in order to enable the possibility to come and to sign a peace accord officially soon enough in Washington. At the moment, our delegation is deliberating with opening direct flight lines, visas for visitors, innovation, opening consulates, fighting the coronavirus and many other things. This is going to be a different kind of peace. It's going to be a warm peace, not because it's so hot there, but because it's going to be a warm peace. It's going to be a warm peace because it is based on coordination in the economy with innovative and entrepreneurship economies similar to ours. These economies with great money that's looking where to invest. And for the first time, the state of Israel that got investments from all over the world is going to receive investments in the Middle East from the Middle East. A huge change. This is a peace that creates job positions, encourages entrepreneurship, expands the economy of ours and the UAE's, and it's a rapprochement between the two peoples. You know, I meet with a lot of leaders in the Arab and Muslim world, many, more than you think, but this is a peace that will enable meetings, direct meetings, encounters between the citizens of Israel and those countries, the population in those countries. It's a huge thing. It is a peace for peace. Now, from peace to peace, I want to go over to the peace and hello to the first graders in the school system. You know, during the coronavirus, we are opening the academic school year. It's not a simple matter. There are very major logistic problems. My wife just told me she came from a meeting with the principal of a school in Jerusalem and with parents. And there's a problem because small kids who come to the first grade, they come from the kindergarten, they used to be hugged. And this is what usually the teachers do in first grade, but you cannot hug them, so what do you do? So my wife suggested to them to say, we wanted to hug you, we would have done it, but we cannot. Just to explain to the kids that it is impossible, but it's not simple. But I'm sure we're going to overcome these problems and others. And this is a very important achievement to the education system in Israel. And from here I'm going to the coronavirus cabinet to make the final decisions to open the academic school year so that they can look after after our kids. We decided that we're going to make a decision regarding the red cities the eve before the beginning of the school year. That's exactly what we said we're going to do, and we did. We said it to have less and less red cities and more open classes, because we are concerned about the health of the kids, but also about the economy. And I must tell you that most of the cities, the classes are going to open, the schools are going to open, and I want to wish from here to all the students in the states of Israel successful, open, fruitful school year. Learn a lot, study, read books, not on the computer, but just read books and expand your knowledge. I am excited together with you, and I wish all of us success. Questions? Mr. Prime Minister, Jared Kushner said today that the president did speak to you regarding the sale of the F-35, so it's not exactly peace for peace. What do you declare now that Israel will have no connection whatsoever to this deal? Another thing, the head of the budget division wrote in his letter, he said that there were some fictitious budgets and that the state of Israel is going to pay a high price for what is being done. Is it correct? And is it true that you are preferring consideration for short term? And you just congratulated the children who are going to school. You know that Professor Gamzu is not exactly in agreement with this. Do you think that the way people, the senior ministers, are talking about the czar of the corona are suitable? I'm so amazed by your questions. Some of them are based on the wrong reports of yourselves. First of all, regarding the F-35, it wasn't part of the deal. The Americans admitted it, and our position has not changed. And there's nothing to renew. But I do have to renew, and I can say that in this visit, the head of the Security Council of the United States said it publicly and to me. He said that the United States is committed, absolutely, he said, absolutely, to maintain the military edge of Israel. He said we did it during the year, and we definitely are going to do it now. That's all I can tell you about it. Beyond that, I can listen to what you want to say, but I don't want to say things that are not right for the moment. Your second question, I want to tell you something. I just mentioned the step that actually generated the revolution in the economies of Israel. Without it, there's no startup nation, high-tech industry, and all that. But there's another thing, without which Israel would have remained a country of the third world, and no PM before me was ready to do it, to take this step, and I did it. This step was opening the currency market, to take away all the limitations on foreign exchange. You can take as many dollars outside as you want, you can bring in. The businesses don't have to get any approvals. Everything is free. And there was a huge opposition of the professionals, and I respect it. A huge opposition to that. And one of the main opponents was, it so happens, the Minister of Defense, and his name was Dan Meridor. He resigned not because I took away all the limitations, but I just, first of all, I gave just a very few. I said, he thought that a lot of money is going to run away from this country, and many people criticized it, but I thought differently. And you can judge now how essential was this step that I insisted on. And it brought huge amount of foreign exchange to Israel, not out of Israel. And these monies go to free economies. And there was an opposition to that. But luckily, I became the Minister of Finance at the time. And I think that you have to understand that even today, the decision of who makes a decision, the civil servants or the elected people. Of course, the elected government is the one to decide, not the civil servants. Obviously, they all want it. And therefore, the decision is ours, and the decision is that of the elected government, and we're going to do it. I just want to say one thing. When I walked into the Ministry of Finance, and the media is off, they don't want to hear this. Look at this. You see what the situation is? There's no chance that they're going to broadcast it because they're off the air. Anybody here that's still broadcasting? Anybody here? What happened? Yes, Channel 11 is here. Quickly, get off because you'll get criticized by others. They went off. Okay. So here is what I want to say to you now. In 2003, when I entered the finance ministry and I made the decisions that I made, very harsh ones, we had to get money from the people. The country issues bonds, and it says, give me money and I'll give you interest. There was a bond of 10 years that you had to get back. The rate of the interest was then 12%, huge. Do you know what the rate of the bonds today for 10 years is? Do you know? I'll tell you what it is. It's 0.7%. It's almost, it was 20 times more, and we took it down to 5% of what it was. We have a huge credit in the international communities because of my reforms that changed the economy of Israel. And I can tell you that the situation of the credit, now you can get money actually in a price almost zero, so we can afford to increase the debt of the state of Israel and to give the money to the citizens and to businesses, to our economy. And with all due respect, this is my opinion. So, okay, at that time, the civil servants opposed me, and today they do as well. So I'll always be happy to hear their opinions. But the ones who make the decisions is us. And we're doing the right things for the state of Israel. I don't think the citizens can complain. As to Mr. Merido, of course, I spoke to him. There's a natural tension. Now he's talking about the education system, that the Minister of Education has different ideas sometimes than the school teachers. We will solve this problem as well. Channel 11 now is getting an award. Regarding Corona, we remember all the statements of Gamzu, the Corona Czar, and also the Minister of Education. If his advice was not accepted, I'll be happy to hear if we'll see you visiting the UAE and any other countries like Saudi Arabia, or there are discussions with additional states. I hope we'll have new accords. As for the Corona Czar, yesterday the cabinet of the Corona convened. He brought his traffic light plan, and controversies can happen. Okay, why not? I can tell you, I work in full cooperation with everybody. That's what I can say. Mr. Prime Minister, regarding the Corona Czar, we see not only about the red cities, but also the pilgrimage to Uman. We know that the position of the Professor Gamzu is not allow any flights to Uman at all. Are you in contradiction to him? And aren't you afraid from a scenario that Ronnie Gamzu as well will lose his patience and will resign? Another question, what do you think will happen in 100 days in Israeli politics? Israeli politics, I don't know. I hope we'll work in harmony, that there wouldn't be one government inside the other. And be happy to work until 23, 24. Now we have to work on very important things and to pass the budget. The budget that was passed in the Knesset has to now go to the government, and next week is the first thing we have to do. You asked regarding the second or the first one, what was it again? Regarding Professor Gamzu. Again, I think his work is good, it's organized well, but the main thing that Ronnie Gamzu said, and I went along with him, is that we have to wait until we have a basic indicator before we start exerting measures. Pinpointed measures on red cities, yes, but if you come and shut down the whole country where the level of morbidity is high, but the severe patients is relatively low, and the mortality is also relativly low. It's going up, but less than what we thought. And I thought that this thing is something we have to consider very seriously. And therefore, the question I asked is not what are the dates. We spoke about it in the Corona Cabinet. When, in what situation do you turn to another phase? To a more severe phase, not in a date, but according to the level of severe morbidity. And we're talking about 800 severe cases before you're required to do it. Now we're at 400. And our economy is managing to avoid these harsh measures. So I backed the policy. You know, I don't work with people threatening to resign. And it's natural that there will be controversies. That's why we have a government and we make decisions. Until today, there was no conflict between us and we acted according to what has to be done. And I think he's attentive to other opinions as well. But you deliberate, you decide, and you pass the decision. As for the Uman pilgrimage in the Ukraine, this question was taken off the decision of the president of the Ukraine. He determined that there are no flights. The question is, what do you do with Israelis who are there? And what do you do with Israelis? We're checking it now. One of the things we're checking, what do you do with Hasidic Jews who want to go to Uman and already were infected? We're thinking about, if they were already infected, maybe you can enable them, I don't know how many, you can enable them to travel. We're checking it, but it doesn't change the real equation. We don't want to see thousands of people crowding and gathering in one place without masks. We don't want to see it anywhere, by the way. Are you with me? You know what it is? Anywhere I don't want to see it. Do you understand? Yes. I thought you'd say something. In demonstrations, but you didn't say that. Mr. Prime Minister, before my questions, I want to reply to your question. Channel 20 was in the air, and I think we're the only ones in the air. I'm not surprised. Channel 20, I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. It's a very important and festive day for the foreign relations of Israel, and apparently the UAE are the first sparrow to other countries. You said that the sovereignty was delayed because of this accord. Does that mean that any accord we'll have with a Muslim country will jeopardize the territories of our country? And at these moments, when you have arson balloons, the IDF didn't even attack any terror points in the Gaza Strip. It seems that the government is surrendering or accepting the case. Are you planning to hit the enemy in a more harsh way and to make them stop these arson balloons? We do attack them nightly. I'm not sure last night, but I think nightly. You don't have to act on a daily basis. We have our own considerations, but we hit. Yes, we did hit some, and there were many capabilities that were stopped. I don't want to expose here all the things that we do against the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, but they will be hit hard if they continue this way, but they'll have to learn it the hard way. As for the question of sovereignty, I want to remind you that sovereignty exerting the sovereignty in the Trump plan, it's still there because it says that there will be no uprooting of settlements. There will be no uprooting of citizens. There's no such thing. Namely, the Israelis are sitting where they are, and therefore in this plan, according to the plan, there are quite large territories with both Israeli populations and Arab population that will be under the Israel sovereignty. This issue is over. You're not going to establish a Palestinian state according to the old plan, and you start dismantling settlements and the 67 borders and whatever, and divide the Jerusalem. Exactly the opposite. All this appears in the Trump plan. As for the possibility of exerting the sovereignty unilaterally, if the Palestinians are not going to be with us, we have to wait patiently, and I think everybody understands that historic things are happening here. Great things to change the map of the Middle East. They also change the strategic balance of the state of Israel vis-a-vis the joint enemy of all of us, Iran. I think very good things are happening, both to the state of Israel and to the land of Israel. Last. We're also on the air. Ynet. You broadcast it live? Very nice. You thought I'll say a good word about Ynet? Here, I did. You spoke about working in harmony in the government. What about your partners, Gabi Ashkenazi and Benny Gantz, with the future accords? And you also said that we can afford. Why did you say in the last few weeks that if there's no budget, you cannot keep the government? When I'm saying that we're expanding, it doesn't mean you have to stop making decisions regarding the budget that exists. It's not unlimited. It's true that in the largest scope, the debt grows and it's not unlimited. And in every meeting, the governor of the Bank of Israel, Amir Yaron, is saying you don't have an open check forever. I'll never say it. There's no such thing in economy. There is a unique situation that at this moment we can load on ourselves more debt than we ever dreamt. And the whole world as well. I don't ever remember such a situation in the last 100 years. At least from what I know, the world economy. This change I'm ready to take advantage of to a certain level, but not unlimited. And also not unlimited time, because eventually the account will be submitted. You'll go to the bank, you take a loan after a loan after loan with very low interest, very nice, but it's a very low interest. And then they say, okay, now it accumulates and it accrues, and now you have to pay back, and then you have to bring the money from somewhere. So there's something you can expand on, and some other things you have to reduce. Things that are not essential, you can reduce. It's the right approach. And it's important for me to say, and Ynet, maybe they'll broadcast it, that I cannot compare at the moment the international numbers in many things, except in one. I can compare the reduction of the produce, the GNP. And I know there are difficulties. I know that people are in distress and businesses were closed. But here is what we have when we compare the OECD to us. And I'll tell you what we see here. It's quite amazing. Because you cannot know it from the media. The media, of course, left the air, as we know. But this is amazing. Here, these are the countries. We reduced the least, almost. 7.8% on the produce. The average of the European Union is 14.2. It's almost double than us. A state which is after us is Sweden, which did nothing. It did nothing. No closures, no lockdowns, and it went down more than us, namely the policy that we did. This policy acted better in maintaining the economy of Israel than most of the countries in the world. It's not my figures. These are figures of the OECD, and they're definite. There are other comparisons that you don't measure in the same way, but here they do. And therefore, we have a lot to do. Yet, I keep looking for the next step, for the next plan. I work with the Minister of Finance. I work with Professor Simchon, my Director General, and the Governor of the Bank of Israel. We keep sitting all the time, almost every day, and we prepare the next steps, and there will be others in order to help the economy of Israel, to help the employment, creating job placements, training workers, incentivizing businesses. This we can do in the limitations that I spoke about. Not unlimited, but more expanded than we had in the past. I think that in the next accords that will come, I hope, they will come in a situation that I can tell you about it here. There was a definite request on full confidentiality in order to prevent any leaks. But I think if I have something to share, I think the policy that I just described is bearing fruits and bringing results. And I think that the citizens of Israel understand that. What I described here in the last few years didn't happen all of a sudden. It's because we changed the economy, because I took a different kind of line. By the way, people were against me, opposed to me. Even some of my partners, they were against the economic changes, like the Histadrut at the time. They were completely against. They told me I'm going to bury the economy of Israel. They opposed all the efforts I did vis-a-vis Iran and going to the Congress. Also people in the government. I did not bury Israel, but I managed to convince the President of the United States to move away from the deal. Had I not gone there, it wouldn't have happened. Therefore, things will happen, and I cannot describe now all the activities that I did for 25 years to advance exactly opposite perception from what you just heard in the last few days. No one is going to do an official peace with you. Now people are trying to dwarf it and to say it's only with them, everything, then to say the words peace for peace and not territory for peace. Because what it says here specifically, without the Palestinians, nothing is going to happen. If you don't retreat to the borders of 65, this was a doctrine like in the Gospels, and everybody were reciting it, including in the last election campaign. Everybody were reciting it. It was erroneous completely, and I said that there's another way, and it's interesting to see that there's no other camera that's working except Ynet. Oh, Channel 20. I can tell you that I said something else. I don't work from 1 minute to the other. I don't work in how I'm going to get the talk bet and the headline. I work with a very organized doctrine. Politically, economically, security-wise, historic-wise. It is based on the recognition that in the Middle East, the survival of the fittest, the weak one does not survive, and peace you make with the strong. So Israel doesn't ask for pity. It's not Israel that says, look, I'm okay, I didn't kill anybody, I didn't steal anything. We never did these things. I don't have to apologize all the time. I don't have to bend my head all the time and to hope that people will respect me because I'm shrinking and reducing myself. On the opposite. I'm strong, I have a strong economy, I have a strong army, I have a strong policy. This is what brings people closer. The strength brings it closer, the weakness brings people away, takes people away. And I had to fight for this just as I had to fight for the free economy. I had to wage war. When I wanted to reduce the taxes, they said, you're going to create a huge deficit. I said, no way. I'm going to bring money to the coffers of the state. Why collect taxes that you will never get because nobody's going to work? There are many things that I had to change and to lead here, to make a change. And they always try to forget it and to put it at the corner and on the side, but they are reflected in this day. And I'm so excited and so proud that after 25 years of efforts, there were other things in the politics, but a quarter of a century of efforts, we are now realizing this vision of peace for peace, peace out of strength. And I'm telling you, this is only the first step. There will be others. Thank you. The radio, the army radio. It's not just the civil servants who are criticizing you harshly, but also the person who was supposed to be Minister of Finance, Nir Barkat. He says that the minister now is that the reason why you appointed Minister Katz instead of him? I support Minister of Finance. Listen, it doesn't happen in other parties. Here in the Likud, there is democracy, no dictatorship. And there are also personal disputes and various opinions, and it exists only in the Likud. It doesn't exist anywhere else. In all those parties that are talking about democracy, there is no democracy. Anybody who dares say a different word is already thrown away from the parties. There are no primaries, there's nothing. If Yair Lapid doesn't appoint him, or Lieberman doesn't appoint him, or Bennett doesn't, they don't really have elections. It's all, you know, here in the Likud, it's very different. I think it's part of our strength. So there are varied opinions, and I think I heard this criticism, and I must say that I also heard a few interesting suggestions from the person who's criticizing, but I don't agree with his opinion. You can, of course, express your opinion, but there's a place to decide, and I make different decisions. Thank you.
Live from Jerusalem, you've been watching Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to the media on a day that he's already described as opening doors to a new kind of peace. And he reiterated time and time again, this is a day about peace for peace. It might also be worth reiterating that this was taken live as well by our channel, I24 News. Mention was made about the media who were actually covering the full story and who weren't. And of course, we were here live on this channel. But to get more insight on exactly what we did here, we now welcome our diplomatic correspondent, Eli Hochenberg, and she joins us live from Herzliya. So, of course, a wide range of topics were covered in this press conference. I want to start with what we heard, though, Eli, from the Prime Minister on this historic day, a hugely significant moment. Of course, this flight from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi, and of course, the normalization ties. And we kept on hearing in the last half hour or so about the vision of peace for peace. Tell us more.
Right, Benita. So an elongated, extended press conference on behalf of the Prime Minister is no longer a rare occurrence, but this evening, of course, even more so with indeed a historic, groundbreaking visit of an American and Israeli delegation in Abu Dhabi. Netanyahu, perhaps